Many people resist the very thought of allowing things to take place in life, because from our perspective we can't see how anything could be achieved in that way. But if we are more observant, we discover that each and every attempt to categorically control our life is invariably upended by the spontaneity of natural experience. No human being is above this universal spontaneity. And yet many people seek to control life down to the finest detail, failing to realize that the very things that shaped their identity were beyond their control. The impulse to control life is a symptom of the power that we believe we have lost. But true power resides in the mind of one who is liberated from the acquisition of wealth and the control of others. When we give up attempting to control life, we find that we are no longer clinging to or conditioned by any aspect of life. Thus, we are freed from its attachments. The most liberated people on this planet have been those who were free in this way, such as the 20th century Indian sage Sri Ramana Maharshi. The virtuous individual always presents danger to social, religious, and cultural systems that seek to bind humanity with superficial constraints. The individual who knows and follows the Tao is a threat because his way of being is liberated from the shackles of external influence. From the cultural, religious, and social perspective, these individuals are rebels who threaten to disrupt the hypnosis of the status quo. This is why we see the unceremonious killing of such figures who know and follow Tao, such as Jesus of Nazareth, no matter whether you take the story of Jesus to be real or metaphor. True and eternal freedom is loathed by the tyrants of cultural, ideological, theological, social, and religious dogmas, because when we are liberated by the true freedom that we can only find within us, we cease to conform to the machinations of tyranny. Artists, mystics, philosophers, scientists, and the spiritually inclined all exhibit this exalted state through their own creativity and humility, which often exposes the flaws of a system that seeks to dictate to the masses. The rebellion of Lao Tzu's Taoist way has always posed a threat to the established order, especially in China. True Taoism was suppressed in the first decades of the People's Republic of China, with people even persecuted during the Cultural Revolution, though it continued to be practiced in Taiwan. Taoism has often been scorned because the essential Taoist teaching of Wu Wei is about surrendering your life into the comforting arms and the way of the universe rather than conforming to social ethics. The absolute Tao is the prerogative of the original Taoist. But this sincerity is confusing to any established order, because the Tao of Lao Tzu is as vast as it is vague, and so it escapes conventional thought and behavior. But what Lao Tzu and other Taoists knew within themselves is beyond intellectual debate or conjecture. This eternal truth, known only by some people, frustrates those who know it not. An authentic Taoist is often thought of as a soothsayer or witch, because our world seeks to find definitions for everything. This absurd definition gives the masses some sort of psychological closure, as if they now somehow understood Tao. In the eyes of an established ideology, theology, or organized religion, this experiential truth disrupts the social indoctrination that keeps the masses moving to the beat of someone else's drum. This is one of the main reasons why Lao Tzu's Tao conflicts with Confucius's ideology. Lao Tzu understood that any form of social or cultural hierarchy destroys the awareness of trust in the universe. Confucius could not accept this, because his approach was only for those who governed. He thought if those who governed were liberated and morally noble, society would benefit. In truth, this view is not oriented toward the freedom of the individual. Rather, it is a clever system devised to manage society without the people of that society questioning their position. Democracy is similar. The ideology of democracy tries to maintain a society's comfort and convenience based on liberal views, so that the bigger questions of life are never asked of those imposing democracy upon the people. The hierarchical systems of governments, banking, corporations, and royalty end up becoming tyrants rather than servants. Yet according to Lao Tzu, if any system is devised to control anything, then we have ceased to follow the way of nature. Then control invariably turns into a selfish and corrupting urge to lord it over others. As John Dalberg Acton, the English Catholic historian, politician, and writer, wrote, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Great men are almost always bad men. Selfish power has corrupted the world with the belief that we can control life within a fixed reality that is devoid of spontaneity. Evolution, on the other hand, means pushing the limitations of our minds and the traditional boundaries we have constructed. Confucianism, the religion of Taoism, and other religious traditions are being tested in the modern era. Their dogmas have become exhausted, and the world is becoming attuned to an authentic spirituality, as a new awareness of ourselves in relation to each other, the world, and the universe is developing. Tradition is not intrinsically bad, and many traditions can be beautiful. But they lose this beauty, and they become psychologically damaging when they set up dogmas to imprison the mind. We only have to look at modern-day Christianity for an example. The way of Lao Tzu was to never be attached to any tradition that imprisoned our mind, because if we hold our center within, we will move with the evolutionary energies of the universe without resistance. These evolutionary energies materialize as synchronicity on the level of the conscious mind. Though traditions may come and go, their remnants sometimes linger within the collective consciousness for some time. The continent of Asia is a good example, because even though the ideology of Confucianism is often unacknowledged as a prevailing system of thought, the dogmatic beliefs of that socioeconomic religious ideology still keep people from embracing change. These dogmas are bringing tenseness and frustration into the lives of the common people, because the collective consciousness has evolved past such rigid traditions, much as we are evolving past the vain materialism of the West and its attempts to shove liberalism down everybody's throat. Consciousness is dancing to a new rhythm and vibration, both collectively and individually. There is an organic pattern, or we could say order of the universe, that is a blueprint for nature to express its beauty. In Chinese, this is called Li. Li is usually translated as the markings in jade, grain in wood, and fiber in muscle. It is supposed to signify a definite pattern that originates within an organism as its nature and comes into existence when an organism harmonizes with the Tao. This principle is usually thought of as Neo-Confucian rather than Taoist, because it differs from the Confucian virtue of Li, which is based on correct understanding and practice of rites and ceremonies. The Confucian concept of Li has no relevance to the way of Lao Tzu or to the harmony of nature. Nor is it relevant to Wu Wei. Nature exhibits the Taoist Li, always, as the mineral, plant, and animal kingdoms are not intelligences that could try to disrupt its harmony. The human kingdom, on the other hand, being the highest form of intelligence on this planet, constantly seeks to challenge nature's laws and rhythms. Humanity has a schizoid sense that we are somehow alien to this planet. Yet we depend on nature for everything that gives us life. Without the food that we eat or the air that we breathe, we would not have evolved out of the lower kingdoms. We feel alienated from all other life because we perceive only a linear world. From this convoluted view, we build our communities on linear systems. The society is a construct of design systems, such as organized culture, government, politics, and religion, which all oppose natural laws and swim against the current of Tao. We erroneously uphold these systems because we feel that life would be nothing without them. Yet they are built on the notion that we can control nature's pattern, Li. The destruction of nature for material gain is a result of these systems' effect on the human mind. We pay more attention to our own indoctrination than to the actual world that gives us life. Nature, being nonlinear, cannot be understood by a humanity shaped by a linear perspective. From this standpoint, we seek to lord it over nature because we do not understand it. Yet according to Lao Tzu and Chuang Tzu, this is the very problem that will lead us into complete and utter annihilation, because in not understanding nature, we do not understand ourselves. The Tao that Chuang Tzu could perceive in everything does not exclude human life. Human life is an intrinsic part of nature because a human being is nature. The fight for control of nature stems from humanity ignoring its own nature, which we do when we adopt external influences that transform us into machines. Our psychology in turn resembles the repetition of a machine rather than the spontaneity of nature. The mind of the average individual is solely focused on the maintenance and upkeep of a linear system. Such a person is unlikely to allocate any energy toward her own inner world, because that would conflict with her linear habits. But this orientation toward the outer world is going to lead us into the arms of annihilation if we do not realize that all natural growth comes from within the organism. And all of nature's constituents, including human beings, function according to this universal pattern. Nature's harmony can be disturbed but never eradicated, because the Tao courses through the patterns of Li. Organisms that challenge this order do not fare well. We generally ignore the fact that the organic pattern and principle of Li are within the human organism too. The organic pattern of Li within the ecosystem is the same intelligence that is found in our nerves, senses, and ultimately our cognitive functions and psychology. This is why those who practice spiritual cultivation usually have a harmonious biological and psychological disposition. They show respect to their bodies and minds by refusing to overstimulate them with excessive consumption. The organic pattern of Li within the ecosystem is the same intelligence that is found in our nerves, senses, and ultimately our cognitive functions and psychology. This is why those who practice spiritual cultivation usually have a harmonious biological and psychological disposition. They show respect to their bodies and minds by refusing to overstimulate them with excessive consumption. The Taoist philosophy of Li affirms that anyone can attain a liberated state of harmony with the world, but only if we act in the same way as nature. The ecosystem of nature is nothing like the average modern life of a human being. What, then, would it take for a human to act as nature intended? Nature's way is harmonious because each of its components follows its own Li, its way of harmonizing with other manifestations of Tao. This mutual resonance and interdependence is known as Ying in Chinese, and is another key aspect of Taoist philosophy. It is an essential principle for understanding the effortless mind. The mutual resonance and harmony of nature are only possible in the way they are as the Tao is. When we look into nature, we do not see the busyness and complexity of, say, a city. On the contrary, we perceive a simple world in harmony through the stillness of Tao. Chuang-Tzu said that from the still point of the Tao in the center of the circle, one can see the infinite in the world of forms. This means that the mind that is completely empty and still can perceive reality as it truly is. The Tao liberates the mind from its linear constraints by enabling it to follow the way of nature. To act according to nature requires becoming receptive to the forces of the cosmos, which can only be received in the complete stilling of the mind. The process of settling the ripples of the mind is known as nirodha in Sanskrit, which in Patanjali's classical yoga means restriction. The process of stopping the whirls, vritti in Sanskrit, of the mind. This stilling of the mind is the key objective of many forms of meditative practices and Eastern wisdom.